Hi, I'm Danny Spitzberg, and I'm working in collaboration with Start.coop to host this event. So I'm going to breeze through my introduction. We have a whole lot of talks, and we have some breakout groups. This event is about building equitable ownership. What does that mean? Well, building equitable ownership in tech, if you ever remember using a payphone, is a complicated question of, well, who owns that thing? And when a car drives out into this phone that I once saw, this is like in, somewhere in Hell's Kitchen, New York, who's going to take care of that? What tech infrastructure and what accountability and ownership is out there for us to make sure that we can still make phone calls when we don't have a smartphone, or when we just are in a pinch, or your phone died and there's nowhere you can plug it in, the bar is Exterminated. So building equitable ownership is about having ownership and control of our technology and involving the users and workers and owners in a way that makes it all good. We all get the benefits of that ownership, like wealth and power. But we'll get into that, and then people will explain it in real projects. We have a few speakers opening up tonight, so can I ask Mahasin and Greg and Hilary and Ojan and Ben just to stand up and say hi real quick? Yay! Okay, those are our opening speakers. And then we have a scattered projects. See, they just met each other. And we'll go through those as well. Just a tiny bit of background. If we go back to the 30s, Upton Sinclair, who wrote a whole lot of books, even a science fiction book, ran for governor. That science fiction book was about what would happen when he won his race for governor. He was a weird one. He got very, very, very close to winning the governorship for California. But he had this weird acronym called EPIC, which was End Poverty in California. And in that, he had 12 principles for how he would end poverty in California. One of them was private ownership, a basis for freedom when tools are simple, becomes a basis of enslavement when tools are complex. He was also very into alternate ownership structures. What we can do if we flip this sentence inside out is essentially say, well, if private ownership and complex tools are what we get, then we're basically trapped. As users and workers and other people who depend on, I guess at the time, more like agricultural tools, we're trapped. But if we have simple tools and or cooperatively owned complex tools, maybe we can make something work out. So that's kind of the premise for this night, is what can we do to make sure that our tools are simple and accessible, that we can hold them accountable to us. The goal for the night is very, very simple. We are hosting this event, we're all in person, look around. There's loads of people here who come from design, development, business development, data processing, data engineering, data science, and tech. There's people who do law, policy, finance, community organizing. There are people who are working on these projects. I'm going to give a shout out to the Start.coop cohort. Start.coop is a program, an accelerator that Start.coop, I'll explain a little bit, but basically it's the first cohort of projects that are trying to scale equitable ownership in real projects, and they'll all be up there in a minute. So building this ecosystem is the goal. Think of this event as one instance in which this bigger ecosystem, bringing all those different people together, can get connected and get more productive. We need a whole new culture and a whole new finance thing for tech if we want to see some equitable ownership, and this is where some of that can keep moving and keep happening.
My name is Ben Gansky. I'm a co-founder and the executive director of Free Machine. And before I jump in, I just want to say thank you to Danny for inviting me to speak. And I just want to first start by expressing my tremendous admiration for the people in the room. I'm like a little bit starstruck when Danny told me that there's going to be a large contingent of people from the Tech Workers Coalition. I've been following y'all's work very closely since about Project Maven, Fiasco Zone, and I have the deepest respect and very inspired by what you do. So, okay, I'll here for the first one. Don't worry about what I said. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the organization that I run, and then we're going to hear from one of my collaborators, Cadwell Turnbull, who is right now watching via video conference. Hi, Cadwell, and you'll see him up on the screen soon. Okay, so let's get started. All right. So I want to talk about who we are and what we are. So Free Machine, we're based out of Los Angeles. I drove up today. And we're a collective of people from the creative zone, designers, artists, urban planners, amateur policy wonks. Our organization sits at this nexus of public policy, technology, and culture. And culture is really our home turf. We're people who come from backgrounds in theater, game design, filmmaking, writing, and we came together a little bit more than a year ago around this mission that we wanted to invigorate a public conversation that will steer us towards a future that's a high-tech one that is equitable, sustainable, and abundant. It's nice to tell stories or to use storytelling as a mechanic to get people interested and involved in this kind of effort, but for us, it actually has to come down to policy change. So that's our core metric of success. Okay, so this is, I'll talk a little bit about our first program, Future Perfect. So Future Perfect is the full title is Future Perfect, a post-capitalist adventure. It's a live group choose-your-own-adventure in which participants take on the role of neighborhood council members of an imaginary society called Tomorrowland. And so this is the way that it works. You sit down at tables, each table is its own neighborhood, and the whole thing is wrapped in this immersive fiction. And what we do is we present you with a series of different dilemmas over 20 fictional years. And all these dilemmas arise out of the trajectory of automation technologies and or climate change. And so with each of these scenarios, we're presenting you with this issue. We give you a binary policy decision, 3 minutes to debate it with your neighborhood table, and then you vote. And depending on how each table votes, it changes the trajectory of this narrative. So at the end of the 20-year fictional period, the group has ended up in one of 4 potential futures, depending on where you are at with whether you distributed wealth more equally or concentrated it in your society, and have you mitigated the worst effects of climate change, or are we totally screwed? This is just a little bit about Future Perfect. We've done a couple bits of now. Okay, so I want to talk about our new initiative. This is a couple different programs that are grouped under this banner of the concept of public option for AI. And so what we were really thinking about is this issue here. If this is the spectrum of potential technology programs or projects, this is a Venn diagram where one circle says profitable, the other circle says good for society. The middle, cool, great. The part that is just profitable, the profitable edge, that's where we want to see regulation. And the part that is just good for society, how do we instigate that? How do you get that to actually live? And we didn't want to just see regulation and a non-profit-oriented kind of development. We wanted to see democratic ownership and democratic oversight. So thinking about the structures that exist that allow people to actionably get their input into ownership and governance, rather than reinvent the wheel, we're pitching this as a city-scale government project. And what we're proposing is a new kind of department at a city scale, call it maybe the Department of Intelligent Technology. And this department would be responsible for going to community, engaging with the community, bringing together a representative sample of community members, educating them about the capabilities and limits of machine learning tools, and then through a design process, surfacing specifications and design that then they take on as a department, and they go through a whole procurement process and do RFP, and we end up with a tool that is based in data that's taken from the community. So there's this investment, not just figuratively, but an actual, tangible thing. And that community owns that tool. They don't have to, have some kind of deal where they, we get to use this for a discount, and we pass our data upstream to you. So this is a public option for AI. We're right now kind of spelling out this vision paper right now, being published as a manifesto, and it's really just, we don't have all the answers. We're trying to give just enough resolution to this idea that we're going to spur really good conversations where somebody, like the people in the room here perhaps, look at it and say, this is interesting, but this part is totally bullshit. You can't do it like that. You have to do it like this. So all we're trying to do is lob a really gaudy paper airplane over the wall to say, can we start this conversation? We don't think that this conversation is being had in this way yet. Twinned with this initiative here, and under this public option for AI umbrella, we have this program, Common Future. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to Cadwell here. So let's see if we can swap them out.
you reached out to me after you found my story, Monsters Compiling Your Season, that was published in The Verge's Cadwell Psychology. It takes place, it's set in 2048, in a world ravaged by climate change. It's also set on St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, right after a Category 5 hurricane. I grew up in the Virgin Islands. The devastation of the 2017 hurricane season compelled me to write the story. In this future, the residents of St. Thomas do solidarity, economics, and cooperative AI called Common to help them prepare and recover from storms. It is a future that I would hope to see in the future where advanced technology can be used for public good. The project that Ben was talking about, Common Future, is an expansion of this idea. A shared world fiction anthology made up of creatives and experts imagining a collectively owned AI solving social problems. Our goal is to build a grounded science fiction future, built out of the knowledge of our present and the best predictions of where we're headed. The project will depict both use cases and cautionary tales in order to present a nuanced but optimistic future. That alone would be enough to make this a great project. But what I'm truly excited about is the ownership model for Common Future. For a long time, I've been trying to imagine ways that smart, creative people can come together for mutual benefit in a way that is democratic. If we are advocating for democratic access and control of technology, it makes sense that our storytelling should also represent that practice. We want Common Future to be a completely shared world, with ownership extending to all the creators working within the world. That means developing a world that is functionally a co-op. My hope is that this project develops into something living and dynamic that can be adapted into other creative mediums. I'd like to talk more about this in a breakout session if we get one. Thank you for listening to me. It's something I'm really excited about, and I'm happy to be here virtually.
I'm going to welcome up our next talk from Mahasin.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to be here myself. I'm so excited to be in a room full of conscious-minded people ready to make conscious change and combat the housing crisis situation that's going on right now. If you're not aware about it, I'm here to tell you all about it. So I'm lucky enough to be a co-founder of Roots and Returns. Roots and Returns is an affordable housing investment real estate cooperative. I said it all in one sentence. That's true. That's what we do. So for the past 16 years, I've been member and owner of Arizmendi Bakery. Who knows Arizmendi Bakery here? Yeah, 75%. If you don't know, there's some pizza over there for you to get to know it. So Arizmendi is part of the association, and the association has 22 years of developing and running successful cooperatives. That's a long time. Let me tell you a story. There's this guy named Jose, and he works at Arizmendi Bakery with me. He's been there 10 years. He's a very valued member of Arizmendi. He's on numerous committees, born and raised in East Oakland, completely talented, bilingual young brother. We love Jose. Jose loves Arizmendi so much that he has a pizza paddle tattooed on his entire forearm. Okay? One day Jose serves a lady a small cup of coffee. He's very excited about that small cup of coffee, and he runs to the back where I am on break, and he says, Mahasin, I just served my future wife a small cup of coffee. I said, Jose, how do you know she's your future wife? What's her name? He said, I don't know what her name is, but I promise you I'm going to marry her. I said, all right, whatever you say, Jose. 3 months later, they're married. I kid you not. So, Ruth, his wife, she lives with her mother, and she is a nurse. She just got her nursing degree, and her mother's retired, and her mother is moving out into a retirement home, and Ruth has to move out of the home. Jose lives with another member of Arizmendi, and they just found out that their landlord is selling the home, and they also need to move out of the home. Well, guess what? Simultaneously, Ruth and Jose are expecting baby Jose. So So, their need for housing is very urgent. Uh-oh, there's a problem, you guys. Yep, it's that housing crisis problem. You know, that problem that we weren't paying attention to before, but now it's here, it's hit home. It's hit Oakland, it's hit Arizmendi, and it's hit Jose. What are we gonna do about it? We're gonna help them find a house? Yeah. That's right, have no fear. Dun, 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 dun. Roots and Return is near. That's us. Roots and Returns Cooperative, we are dropping a 750 square foot, net zero, sustainable material, small home in a homeowner's backyard. It's an ADU, accessory dwellers unit. All the homeowner has to do is lease out 750 square feet of their backyard that they're not using, and we're gonna come in and we're gonna build, fund, maintain, and manage an ADU at no cost to the homeowner, and at the end of every single month, we're gonna kick you back a few $100 just for letting us do it. Believe it or not. I know, crazy idea, right? The time is now. You know why the time is now? Because yes, the time is now, the housing crisis has hit home, and you know how we're going to do this? Well, the 22-year history that the association has done with building all of these co-ops, well, we're going to use them. Arizmendi is going to loan us some money. The construction co-op, they are going to build us some ADUs. The design co-op, they've helped us design some. And again, all you, the homeowner, has to do is lease us 750 square feet. And we're going to lease that ADU out for under market value. We'll get into that later. So, the reason why this time is so important is because San Francisco Assemblyman Bill Tang quoted that adding a secondary unit is one of the cheapest and fastest ways to build affordable housing. And did you know, 2 years ago, the state of California mandated the expedited development of these type of ADUs just so we can push these type of projects through. So, it's kind of a win-win for everyone. Let me tell you why. The homeowner, they get an ADU built to them at no cost. They get monthly income that they didn't have otherwise, and they get to work with us, a local-based mission business, Roots and Returns. They don't have to be landlords, and they don't have to be developers, so we're going to do all that for them. The renters, they get affordable housing. They also get trustworthy landlords, again, us. And they get to know every single month a piece of their rent that they're paying is going toward building another ADU for their friend that's getting evicted. Guess what the community gets to do? They get to crowdfund and invest in a very unique way that they wouldn't have got to otherwise. Because we are a cooperative, we get to raise money very uniquely. And the investors, they get to personally, firsthand, combat the housing crisis. So, everyone wins and everyone receives amazing karma. Totally win-win, right? Now, you know what we already have? We already have some homeowners ready to lease their 750 square feet out for us to build our first ADU. And we already have enough money for our first one as well. But what we're looking from you all today is a $200,000 investment, as well as strategic partners to come on and help us think of ways to cut our costs. If you're interested in a long-term investment, we'd also like to talk to you in our little breakout group. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Okay, so it looks like my slides are going to be a little bit weird tonight, so we'll see what happens, especially in the center. We are based in Oakland, California, in the center of the East Bay, and we always want to ground in like, where are we right now? We're in the Bay Area here, but I want to honor that we're on occupied Illinois territory. This is the map of the Bay Area, and we're in runway 2 land right now, where we're standing. Okay, this is going to be fun. This is the East Bay Break's mission. And I just want to read this out to give a real clear summary of what was really at the heart of our work. Our mission is to facilitate Black and Indigenous people of color and allied communities to cooperatively organize, finance, purchase, occupy, and steward properties, taking them permanently off the speculative market. Creating community-controlled assets, empowering communities to cooperatively lead a just transition away from an extractive, capitalist system. It's one where communities are ecologically, emotionally, spiritually, culturally, and economically restorative, and regenerative. So that's what we're about. And this is just a little bit about the mindset shift that we're trying to create, right? When we really talk about real estate, we talk about it in the market state of mind. How do we get the most amount of money for the land we're talking about, make deals, make money, right? Speculation. A lot of the solutions of that are based in charity, right? How do we just get some money donated and give people homes? That's a real great solution, but it's pretty temporary, right? And it has a limited bandwidth. It's not a systems change. So we're thinking from a common state of mind. How do we all work together in a way that provides housing for everybody? So yeah, a little bit about how extractive real estate works. And this is, I want to get into the meat of it. How we're actually seeing the system right now is one where users, the tenants of buildings, are being extracted from, not participating in the wealth generation or the asset stewardship, versus how we could transform the system. So this is pretty basic, right? Landlords are funded by banks who manage, own, and purchase these properties, right? And on the other side of things, we the people, tenants, are paying rent. In Oakland, 64% of individuals are renters, so most of us are actually in this tenant class here. I'm not sure what the stats are in San Francisco. Now, to complete this flow chart, the money that comes here ends up going through equity and profit into the pockets of the landlord, and through interest and profit to the bank. Now, I don't want to demonize landlords here. Being a landlord is part of the American dream, right? We've been taught that this is how we have to live to try to get a little bit of land and have a stake for ourselves, build some wealth. So it's not that anyone who's a landlord is an equal person. I do not think that. But the system is one in which wealth is systematically extracted from tenants to the owning class, right? And if we see these, let's try to translate this into real estate. Tenants to landlords. So if we go to the next slide, sorry, I'm running out of time. A couple more clips. We're reimagining this so that East Bay Prec, so at East Bay Prec, we are the landlord actually, and we're collectively owned by all of our owners, which are residents, investors, community members, and by creating this structure, instead of relying on outside sources for funding, we're returning the equity and profits back to residents and sending a small return on investment not to the banks, but to our investors, which can be anybody in the community, small-scale investments. So we're going to have a breakout session if you have more questions. You can check us out on our website. We launched this past December, open for investment, communities, community owners. And yeah, I hope to talk to you in a breakout session.
It's so great to be here tonight. This is such an inspiring crowd. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. I'm going to talk with you about some trends that are contributing to this moment of crisis that we're all in, and how they're also creating moments of opportunity for equitable ownership. And I will start by sharing what my quote of the day was on June 24th, 1991 in the New York Times, not because I was anything great, but just because of a fluke. What I said was, Teach for America came to be 500 points of light. Does that ring a bell for anyone as old as me? 1,000 points of light, anyone? So George Bush Sr. was all about how volunteers could save the world. So I said it came to be 500 points of light, the idea that certain individuals with enthusiasm can help a troubled system, but I think much more profound changes are needed. So it sounded good, it made the quote of the day, but really I was a failed Teach for America volunteer. I was in the first class. We could say they didn't support us very well, blah, 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 but I ended up loving teaching. I ended up loving the kids in Bedford-Stuyvesant, 7th graders where I taught, but I was not cut out for the classroom management, so I didn't end up staying as a teacher. But I did learn a lot of things that have served me as a social change activist, which is why I went to do that in the first place, and as a co-op developer. So my training is part of what I do, and my teaching training there has been really helpful. But Danny asked me for a fun fact, and that was what came to mind, but the reason I decided to share it with you is that I found a path that was about helping to make more profound changes, and I think that's why we're all here tonight, because we're interested in ownership in a way that's equitable. We're interested in being workers, in supporting workers, and having workers share in ownership, and that's been my passion and full-time dedication for the last 17 years. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about our income and wealth gaps, about the demographic shifts we're going through, and about the massive wealth transfer that is already happening, and how we can use it as an opportunity. So this is a global statistic. It's pretty obvious. It's from Oxfam International. 62 really rich people own the same amount of wealth as half of the global population. I don't need to say anything more. It's insane. On the next slide, we have a picture of this in the United States, and in particular the racial wealth gap. So this statistic is that the 400 richest Americans own more wealth than the entire black population, plus 1/3 of the Latino population combined. So we think a lot about the income gap, and the wealth gap is actually more severe, and across racial lines, it has been always horrible and actually getting worse since the Great Recession. So I think a white person has, I think, 13 times the wealth that a black person has today, just for example. In terms of demographic shifts, as you probably know, living in California, we've already gone through a shift where we are already a majority minority state. So it's already true that the majority of people in our state, we're one of 5 states that this is true for, are people of color. And by the year 2043, that will be the case throughout our country. And as we know, this is something that is causing some shockwaves for some portion of our population, and it's something we need to celebrate and embrace. And it's something that we have an opportunity to impact in this ownership conversation as well. Our other demographic shift is about age. So I don't know how many of you know this statistic that 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. It's true. They're turning 65 anyway. A lot of them are still working past 65. But this is already happening. There are about 76 million baby boomers and more millennials, and 10,000 millennials are turning 21 every day. So we're really shifting from older people dominating the economy and the workplace to younger people and being in that position. And what this means for us in the work that I'm doing and many of us in this room are involved in is that we're thinking a lot about something that I've come to call the silver tsunami. Many of us have coined that phrase. And it literally is the greatest wealth transfer in our nation's history. It's about $30 trillion that are transferring from baby boomers as they retire or die to people in their family or to others in their life. And this phenomenon is talked about a lot in terms of how it affects, the aging population and the growth of the home healthcare workforce and the challenges of aging in healthcare, for example. But a lesser known impact of this trend is that businesses are changing hands, and many are closing because they are owned by baby boomers who don't have a succession plan. And that's what we work on at Project Equity, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. So this is from our website. You can actually go and poke around. If you're from a different state and you want to know how many businesses are owned by baby boomers in that state, you can actually poke in and find out on our website. It turns out that 2.34 million businesses that employ people, so this isn't including the sole proprietorships, are owned by baby boomers, and they employ 25 million people. Now, I didn't know how to put that number in context, but it turns out that there are about 150 million jobs in the United States. So this is 1 in 6 jobs. And the potential crisis here is that these are mostly small and medium-sized enterprises, and most individuals don't plan for the future, right? So business owners are no exception. What % of family-owned businesses do you think pass on to the next generation in their family? Any guesses? I'm hearing 5, 15. Yeah, it's actually both. So 15% today pass on to the next generation, and 5% pass on to the third generation. But 20 years ago, the numbers were twice that. So, all kinds of things are contributing to this. But the fact is that passing it on to your child is no longer an option for most business owners. So what are the other options? To sell to a competitor is one. We work with business owners throughout the Bay Area and in other parts of the country. And most of them don't want to sell to their competitors because they are proud of the business they built, the people who built it with them, the customers they serve, the community that they're part of. There's also the opportunity sometimes, not always, but to sell, merger and acquisition. It turns out that mergers and acquisitions are becoming much more common, so much so that Fortune 500 companies, that their revenue makes up 74% of our GDP, I think it is. And it used to be like 20 years ago, I think it was, like 53%. So the consolidation of wealth is so extreme in business ownership as well as in individual populations. So the option for many business owners, for some, would be to sell to a private equity firm or a larger competitor. And what often happens in those situations is people get laid off. Sometimes the company gets balkanized and the customer list gets used or whatever, sold for parts, basically. So in reality, a lot of businesses are closing. And I don't know if any of you heard on the radio this morning that a comedy club, 30 seconds, okay. I'm gonna fast track this. So businesses are closing around us all the time, and that's what we're trying to prevent. So what does this mean for us? It means that the silver tsunami is actually a golden opportunity. And the way that we're leveraging that opportunity at Project Equity is by educating people in the business ecosystem and in our communities about employee ownership transitions as a way to transfer wealth to workers and to have them own the companies that they work in. Just a very quick, I was just given the 30-second signal, so I'll take like 1 minute-ish to quickly go through the last part of my message for you. Worker ownership brings really significant benefits. This really mirrors what Mahasin said about the work they're doing. So for workers, better pay and benefits, voice, the opportunity to actually share in ownership profits. Businesses are actually more productive, have lower turnover, are better companies, and society has all kinds of benefits, which I don't have time to go into, but it helps everybody. And one study last year showed that median income from wages is significantly higher, job tenure is longer, and household net worth is almost double for employee owners compared to similar companies. So it's good for the business, it's good for the workers, and it's good for communities. We can just flip through these quickly. These are companies that have converted to employee ownership from sole ownership. And they're examples of dozens who are doing it every day. The next slides are about how you do it, and we're not going to take time to walk through that. But Project Equity is one of many organizations around the country that help companies do this. And if you'll just flip to the last one, I just want you to know that there is a new national policy that is supporting employee ownership transitions. It's called the Main Street Employee Ownership Act that passed last August. And everyone can encourage their local small business development centers that are part of the Small Business Administration to work on this, to really fulfill their mandate to promote employee ownership. And finally, there's a need for more patient capital to make this work happen. This SBA legislation is going to help do that. This new fund that my organization has is one of 4 new funds that are financing employee ownership transitions. And we're actually working to get impact investors, community banks who think this kind of thing sounds good but aren't really willing to try it. We're going to do a deal with them so that they can sort of learn that it's not scary and weird, it's actually something that you can do. So patient capital is needed, and the last question for all of you is how can we as individuals or our organizations accelerate growth along any of these pathways, whether it's converting Twitter or converting a local small business to employee ownership or another form of equitable ownership, or starting new entities like the housing co-ops we've heard about today with equitable ownership. So, thank you very much.
Hey guys, I know everyone wants to get into the workout, the workshops, the breakouts, take a break for food and drink, so I'm gonna keep this really short, like 1 minute to do a thanks, a pitch, and a favor. So my thanks is just to Danny and the organizers in this beautiful space for making this happen, for all you guys to be here tonight. My pitch is to really quickly explain what Start.coop is. So a lot of folks have ideas for cooperative businesses, right? How do we change the economy? How do we bring equitable ownership to scale? The hard part is often just building the business model. You know, how do you actually do it? How do you incorporate? How do you get the financing? How do you do the business plan, the marketing? How do you get enough members? And you know, unfortunately, that's the hard part. And so we are an accelerator for cooperatively owned businesses looking for scale. And really our goal is to make it easier to do these models. I think everyone here knows the landscape is way harder than it used to be. And whether you want to compete in tech or housing or whatever sector you're in, the competition's pretty intense, and so you need help, and so we want to be that support system. So, so my favor to you guys is we are celebrating our inaugural cohort. You guys met Mahasin tonight. Did Mahasin do a great job? Mahasin's pretty rad. So we have 5 teams here. They're going to do their pitches. You're going to hear them, and they're going to be part of the breakout groups to be able to spend more time with them. But we are celebrating the end of our inaugural program. So we did a 12-week program with 5 teams out of 82 applications around the country, saying how do we scale cooperative ownership in a real way that changes society, it changes the benefits for individuals. And so you have 5 teams here, and you're going to meet them. But my favorite to you guys is, really, I wanted to be here to celebrate the hard work they put in. So my favorite to you guys is if we could do a little toast to the teams of Start.coop. Cheers to everyone in the room, and you guys are going to meet them in a few minutes. Thank you guys so much.
The goal for this evening is to take this gathering and to turn it more into, and to pull more of the ecosystem around equitable ownership into this action, into this community, and to play it forward. So the idea, the hope, is that these breakout groups become ongoing learning groups, that the projects that you get to meet can keep the conversation going with you, whether it's like a reading group about property in the East Bay, or it's like an action group around getting data and analytics running for rideshare drivers, or anything in between. I'm going to name 2 to start, and then we'll get back to them, but 2 very important conversations is, one, what does it look like to actually fund and do investment around these breakout groups? What does it look like to fund and invest these alternative and equitable ownership models? So that's one. And another project, another breakout group that's more of a broad theme is, how do we keep organizing this community? TIFF, for example, thought we should start a newsletter and some kind of publication, because there's a lot of really weird stuff that people are like, this is good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite people up to do 60 to 90 second quick talks about what they're doing. You guys ready to meet your presenters? Yeah!
Please stay correct. Just summary. We organize with tenants in communities of color at risk of displacement, connecting them with local communities as well as economic migrants who want to do something to stop displacement by supporting with $1,000 investments or runway capital, helping liberate properties criminally off the speculative market. We're creating a real estate system that works for the users, envisioning land without landlords, restorative economics, and healing people power to build this future together.
So if his words and Mahasin's words don't motivate you, I don't know what will. So I'm just going to bribe you. If you come to ours, our bakeries, chocolate muffins, cheesy sauce, please join us.
I want to talk about what we're doing, which is building a network of worker co-op owned staffing agencies that bring together people that work in labor, light industry, food service, along with people that work in tech, design, business development, etc. Bring those 2 groups together to have better ownership, better equity, and better wages overall. Please come.